Portions of the following program may be unsuitable for younger or more sensitive viewers. Viewer discretion is advised.
Remember, the enemy has only images and illusions, behind which he hides his true motives. Destroy the image, and you will break the enemy.
Firstly, that is a debatable point, whether South Africans are xenophobic. I don't think you would have the numbers that you have of foreigners. And I don't think you would sit for years and years without any press out if South Africans were xenophobic. In the majority of cases, only when there are such incidents where people take the law into their own hands. And generally, people who come from outside, because they don't have places to stay, etc., and also the kind of employment they have. If, for an example, you look at how it has been done in other areas, wherein they open a lot of businesses, right? It becomes so obvious that it is not, the numbers are too big. And with time, and people begin to feel, what is this? You will recall an incident in Soweto.
Shop owner Hilal Ainab is taking what's left of his stock and leaving. His was one of the stores targeted during the looting of foreign-owned businesses. Eyewitnesses say an angry crowd gathered in front of this shop on Monday night. When they began throwing stones, the Somali shopkeeper retaliated by firing into the crowd. One of the bullets hit 14-year-old Spiwe Mahori. He later died on the scene. A 23-year-old man narrowly escaped with his life after he was shot in the arm.
As I got closer, I heard a gunshot. I heard it 3 times. I tried running away, but I was shocked to see a young boy fall to the ground.
Although South Africa has a history of xenophobic violence, which some are saying is at the root of these attacks, Ainab believes crime and poverty also played a role.
Of course, at the end of December, people are struggling with the money, and also the guys are having no business.
Since the incident, police have arrested 11 people and confiscated several illegal firearms.
If the foreign people have had guns and they don't have licenses, it worries us because remember, most of those people, they don't have identification.
The Somali shopkeeper is due before the Protea Magistrates Court on charges of murder and attempted murder. Pagamile Hlubi,
They were having
Snake
shops.
Park.
Nobody had ever thought the foreigners have got shops here until a young man was trying to steal and the foreigner shot him, and that became the problem. So you can see what is it that makes the kind of situation go out of hand. I'm saying the numbers of the foreigners in South Africa are far more than the numbers that Europe is fighting about.
South African President Zuma risks race war as he demands land owned by white occupiers can be taken without compensation. You know I'm going to say that again. South Africa's President Zuma risks race war as he demands land owned by white occupiers can be taken without compensation. Jacob Zuma has called for the Constitution to be changed for land reform. He has called for the unity between black parties in order to push through plans. Opponents have warned that the move could trigger a racial war. It follows calls by Zuma's rival, Julius Malema, who called on Africans to reclaim land from Dutch thugs. South Africa's President Jacob Zuma has called on lawmakers to help seize white-owned land without compensation to establish pre-colonial patterns. But he has been warned that the measures would trigger a racial war in a country historically blighted by racial tension. Speaking to Parliament, he called for a unity between black parties. The controversial move would require a change to the Constitution. Zuma's comments echo those of his rival, Julius Malema, who said earlier this week, "So, we are saying black people, all of us, must unite so that we can change the Constitution, so that we can expropriate land without compensation. There's no white man that will understand it." Zuma told Council of Traditional Leaders, "The Black Party should unite on this issue. We cannot fight about nothing." Despite his ANC party having voted down a motion by the opposition EFF, headed by Malema, calling for land expropriation without compensation, Zuma spoke about his great-grandfathers whose land had been confiscated. He said, "It is now time for action. The time for talking, writing, and analysis is over." The president has revealed that an audit of pre-colonial land ownership and said once the audit is completed, one law should be written so that we can handle land restitution without compensation. The necessary constitutional change will be made. The black parties should unite on this issue. His populist remarks followed a campaign by Malema, who has called on black South Africans to reclaim land taken by Dutch thugs. A racial breakdown of land ownership is available in South Africa, but there is a widespread belief that it largely favors the country's white population. Following Zuma's comments, the Telegraph reports, Andries Breitenbach, who heads the Boers Afrikaner Volksraad, described it as a declaration of war. He stated, "We are ready to fight back. We need urgent mediations between us and the government. If this starts, it will turn into a racial war, which we want to prevent." Hey, how's y'all doing? This is Mr. Blows Your Minds coming with another thought-provoking topic. That's right, y'all. Back and again, live in effect. Some of y'all not been doing what y'all supposed to do, but I understand you're busy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep pumping it whether you listening or not, because we're living in a time where things are happening. I got another video that if I didn't drop it before this one, that I'm connecting some of the dots to some of the things that is happening. Everything is formulating. The strategies are being played. And the universal game of chess is being played. So I ran across a story today that I want to share with y'all, right? And it was about South Africa on the brink of a race war. And it's funny that things are happening in this universe, right? And the people who have been downtrodden and oppressed are trying to make concessions to get themselves back into the positions of what is inheritable by their forefathers and ancestors. But the problem is there's people who, under the guise and game, how they actually implemented it across this, globe that we call world, and through time and acclamations of education, right? People have come out of the stupor and start to implement some of the education and understanding and trying to eradicate some of the oppressions by trying to bring back them in a position, of just being, self-reliant or self-independence, right? Right? Just actually for self. But it's hard when you have people who have taken the advantage of a position that people who may have not been privy, or let's just say their indigenous life was not calculable to a people who had other, ideas of what they want to do with your resources and land. And so what we have to look at is, when you look at South Africa, and we understand from going back, we know about apartheid with Mandela's, and right? And a lot of people are not really too familiar, especially the newer age. And what I want to say is just the fact that South Africa is teetering on the brink of race war because the president, Jacob Zuma, wants to pass a law allowing white-owned land to be confiscated, right? But they said there's no compensation for it. There's no compensation for it. So they're saying we're going to take back what was rightfully ours, and we don't owe you anything. Matter of fact, everything that you have garnered from that position till now, take it and leave. Well, if you built your empire on something, and either by your own psychology you believe that the way that you've done it was legal in the game of Monopoly that your people play, but a new people have come and decided that that game does not apply to the geographical location that you're in. And now time has caught up where people are now, again, more astute and knowledgeable about how the game goes. And so moves are being made so that these people will have to be extricated out of the land, so that the people who are considered to be indigenous, right, to the land, wants to reclaim it. And those people are not going to sit there, especially when you're going to say non-compensation for whatever you have built. Okay? And so, as usual, and thus, or us, who are here in America, when they talk about playing the race card, as I showed you in that scene, that you have President Zuma from South Africa, and he says that his people are being called xenophobia, right? xenophobic rather, right? You know, we say xenophobia is that, but xenophobic, right? Is just saying that somebody is in fear, right? It's like having intense fear or fear or hatred of strangers or foreigners, of anything that's strange or foreign to self. Now, isn't that ironic that European people, and again, when we say European, because see, European has been classified to specify white-skinned people. But historically, Europe has not always been white. The white people, or the white-skinned people, and those who are German will say Aryans, right? And I could debunk that, but the fact that they're saying that they are indigenous to Europe is in itself, because when you look at the landmass of what they call Asia and Europe, where's the break that separates Europe and Asia? But just seeing somebody create it, and again, that's the whole, this has been the whole facade in history of a people who create things that don't exist. And then to program everybody else to fall under that game so that you play because this is the game we created. And if anybody doesn't play it, then there's something wrong with you. There's something psychologically wrong with you. We play the game according to the way we designed it, and everybody has to play the way we play. Remember, as kids, when you played, and then let's say you play the game, and then the one who, let's say, he the one that started everybody to play. And everybody put their foot in. You remember that engine number 9. You know what I'm saying? I ain't going to talk about the tiger by the toe, right? Right? Because, see, everybody should know what that tiger by the toe ain't. There wasn't no tiger. But look how they implemented that as children to our people. And that just show you the condition of that brainwashing they know how to do to us. Right? So, this person gets everybody in. And there's rules to this game. And then when the rules don't have, privilege to the person who created, what normally happens? He'll end up changing the rules in the middle of the game to make the rules benefit him. You're going to tag the young man or young lady, and they, no, time out. Well, that's what this is here. They're saying now, by playing the reverse race card of saying xenophobia or a xenophobic person, to say that it's hatred towards us because we are foreign. In aspects of the race game, that would be legitimate. But historically, who are the xenophobia people? How is it that certain people of certain persuasions rule over the masses of people who don't look like you? How is it that people who look like you are all in the positions of power, and then to tell us it's all because of an inferiority, right? The inferior, low, human quality people, right? And this is what gives you your manifest destiny in all these places. But if that was to be so, that these people are considered to be low ebb human quality people, how are they raising to the intelligence, which is your game, to understand how to now play the same game you're playing, and then now that they want to play the rules as it was stated pre-colonial, he said pre-colonial. He said pre-colonial patterns, meaning those things that led up, and the people who resided in those lands in South Africa before there was any so-called European. Now, for y'all who don't know the history of South Africa, Let me give you a little bit to it. Now they say in 1486, Bartholomew Diaz was the first Christian man who trotted on the soil of South Africa. That's in 1486. You know, Bartholomew was a Portuguese, right? From Portuguese, right? Now, this same Bartholomew Diaz is going to call a place later on that he's going to, again, put his cross on the land, that he called that place, I think it was called Angra Pequena, right? I think that's the name. I think it's Angra Pequena, right? And then he named another place Angra dos, something like that. And this is where he set up the cross, right? He set this cross up, and that was his marking his territory, right? So about, let's say, about 107 years later, right, you get the first time an English flag is going to be seen there. And it came again with these 3 ships. You see that chronology all the time in history. Right? I talk about Columbus and the 3 ships, the Nina, Pinta, Santa Anita, all that, right? So it was these 3 ships that end up coming into this place that they had called at the time called Table Bay, right? Now, that was that East India Company, right? You know, this is Portuguese is setting up because remember, Portuguese is coming from their land, traversing around the western aspect of Africa, coming up under the south and going over to India, right? And as they were navigating around, supposedly, now remember, this is their history that they're telling you, right? That his navigation around this is how he's going to see the land, okay? And they're going to set up a port of call and refreshments. This is what's going to place they're going to set up as a place for them to dock, as sometimes to be able to, you know, again, port and supposedly refreshments. But again, it's a game, right? So during this time of them at this port of refreshments, they come in contact with some of the natives of the landmass of that particular time. Now, the one people who they stressed in the South African history is that they had a good relationship with the Hottentots, right? You done heard Hottentots before because you know about Sir Archie Bartman, right? I'll show you a picture of Sir Archie Bartman, right? She was considered to be the Hottentot who they end up eventually taking her, bringing her into the circus, and by, you know, the body, the voluptuousness of her body is where they get this whole thing, how they made those dresses that those white women were wearing with the back up in the back, right? Because it was Sir Archie Bartman who they used as a specimen, right? And matter of fact, even took her and stuffed her and everything else. But again, it was the relationship of the Hottentots who they call, we don't know exactly, because again, you know, white people be funny when they want to name you on stuff. Some crazy, they'll say, well, they're talking in ticks and clicks, so we're just going to name whatever we want to name them. What you say, since we don't look at you as equivalent to us anyway, so we're going to just name you anyway. So you got the Hottentots, who are actually people who kind of migrated over into that South African area anyway. But you also had the Bushmen, again, do we know they call themselves Bushmen? But this is what they call in history. So I'm just saying, according to history, if you were to do the research, you're going to see Bushmen, right? And then they're going to talk about the Bantu were also in the area. So you had these 3, you know, let's say families, or we'll just say families of people who were in that region. But what is that the European, because of this friendliness that happened between him and the Hottentot, he elevated them to say that because of that, they were more intelligent and brighter and better than everybody else, and the rest of them were just wretches that were just in debauched state in their living. Okay? So about 1648, another ships come over in this area. And I'm going to get back to the Hottentot because I wasn't finished with that. But that's when Bartholomew and them, it was Hottentots who they ran into. So this is where they was using this friendship again to be able to infiltrate. Right? See? That's like back in the days when, you know, when we had slang that we could actually speak amongst us, and it used to befuddle the minds of white people. Well, what is that they're saying? But you would have a lot of our people who would be like, well, homie means friend. You know, they would, you know, break down and to give them to infiltrate into, and this is the same thing that happened here. So the Hottentot was used as the infiltrators, right? And they allow them to traverse inwards and use them as, I won't get there though. We'll talk about it when I get there. So, again, like in 1648, you have a ship now coming called the Harlem. You know, y'all that's in New York, call yourself from Harlem, and it's all black metropolis. But Harlem, the name isn't. Harlem is a name came from white folks. Okay? Oh yeah. Yeah, you didn't know that? Yeah, I know y'all know Bedford-Stuyvesant too, all that. Them was white folks' name. Them is not brothers and sisters. Might have been the population, but it sure wasn't named after that. So you got in 1648 this ship called the Harlem, and it was belonging to the East India Company. Now what they did is they put it into this Table Bay. This is what they was calling this area now, Table Bay. And according to that story, it talked about the crew had landed there. And I guess there was kind of a storm or something that had happened. This is the story that they talk about. And they needed a place to dock. And when they docked there, right, they removed and put everything on this Table Valley. And they thought this would be a good place to encamp while they try to, you know, let the storm pass. This is the story that they tell. And so this is where the place they're going to consider to be Cape Town. Okay? So they set up some little huts and stuff, right? And then what happened was they had been there accordingly for 6 months. And during that, they planted some seeds and things had sprouted, and they started realizing, man, this is some good fertile soil. This is actually a land where white people could actually live in, right? So what they did was, you had they got into the Netherlands, and then you had this Leendert Jansen and this Nicholas Prout. They were the two officers of the Harlem, and what they did is they went to the chambers of Amsterdam and asked for a document, right? They was going to make a document or get some establishment or a charter for this particular aspect of this land. So about in August about 1650, they formed a station there. And the committee was instructed to draw up a plan, right? And so it was from this point they started to bring from there and bring in materials and stuff back to the game. Remember, that was at one time, it was just a port for refreshments. Now they're setting up a station and calling it the Table Valley, right? Which is going to be your Cape Town later on, right? So that was the beginning of it. This is how they got in. It started from 1486, but again, they weren't setting up shop in 1486. But when they came in 1648, and by 1650, they set up shop. So they end up giving the commandership to this dude named Van Riebeck, right? Again, this was the East India Company. Now you remember, they're going up to India, right? And what they did is they used the Hottentots, because again, Now, when they brought these people there, they were now porting in there, having men on ship. So now they're bartering, supposedly, this is what they're using the terms, they're bartering with the natives with trinkets and getting things to survive. And then they wanted meat, so now they're asking for cows. And so when the Hottentots could only supply so many cows, then they would have the Hottentots expand beyond in other regions to get more cows for them. And this was now expanded because now think about this. If they are amassing more cattle, and if you got cattle on land, you got to have some place to graze. See, look the slickness here, right? So you got to have cattle to graze. And so now by you amassing all these cows, it's becoming known that everybody who got cows know that we're selling them to the European Caucasians down there. So they becoming accustomed to seeing these people because they're branching using the cows, and the cows are, you understand, widening their territory. You follow what I'm saying? That's how they did it, man. Slick, right? Him slick like that. So by 1657, the company had about 9 company servants, right? And what they did is, they were, at that time, they weren't looking at it as a place to reside in. They were just using it for, accordingly what they write, for just a place to port refreshments, right? You know, so they could traverse to the next point. It was just an in-between point. Then somebody got the idea, hey, let's put some people down there and we can make, you know what I'm saying? We can acquire this land. Because they start off with 9 servants, right? And they set up along, I think it was called the Eliasbeck River by Ronda Scott Bosque. I think that's the area. I think it is. Now, this was considered the first South African colonists. This is where they first colonized it, because they sent in these 9 men that had to be Dutch and German. I think that's what you had to be, Dutch and German, right? And they had to be married. There's a reason for that, but we won't get on to that because I'm going to stick to what we're doing. So these 9 men was given credit so that they could start up an agriculturalist environment. Now again, they were using the cows to expand themselves. So what ended up happening is, months later, they sent 38 more. So what they start to do now is they start to bring more and more. But the men that they're bringing supposedly are prisoners, right? And so if these men are there and they ain't got no women, who you think they're going to end up copulating with? This is why when you seen in the video, you seeing how, and I'll get to that part, that when they talked about foreigners and they talk about the shopkeeper, then you see that, then you was looking like, wait a minute, he looked to be black. Well, see, that's the thing here. See, everybody of my skin ain't my kin. When you on the continent, they understand that. But when we here and we isolated, everybody who's black, we think they black like us. But see, that right there to show you, they called that man a stray foreigner. And I'm going to get into that when I get there. Okay? And it has something to do with this historicalness that I'm talking about right here. Because see, you got these so-called white men who were, you know, prisoners brought onto these colonist lands or colonial lands, were turned into servants to work to till the land. The credit that they were given to have implements of tools and, you know, seeds and all that stuff, they had to pay that back with interest. And once they got that paid off, then they were able to now become, you know, part of the land as owners. Kind of the same thing when you talk about here in America, how the servants worked 7 years and then afterwards they was given a package and they had land and they was getting 50 acres and a mule per person. This is where that 50 acres and the 40 acres of the mule come from. They were given 50 acres per person. So just imagine all them people who were coming over from Europe that were coming to here. And then if they had wife, children, servants, maids, they were getting 50 acres per one of them. So this is why a lot of them was amassing so much land and could have all these slaves on these plantations. That was part of the deal, them coming through. You understand? But that wasn't for the servant, but that was for those other ones that had a little bit more, again, of the nobility, gentlemen, all that. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, going back to this. Now, again, after they done, went through their dues of service, they bring their wife and children. Now they setting up shop, right? So about 1658, they said they made a mistake. Now this is them writing in history. They said, well, we made a mistake in 1658 because they were introducing Negro slaves, right? Now this is according to them. They saying they introducing Negro slaves in Africa, in South Africa, knowing that we was talking about the Bantu was there, right? Hottentot and the Bushmen. But they say that there was a ship, a Portuguese ship, that somebody had stolen that had cargo of slaves on it, and they brought them there, and this is how you are now the origins of blacks in South Africa. That's what they said, man. So I'm telling y'all, man, I love this history, man. See, a lot of y'all ain't gonna read it, man, because sometimes it's a little dry, but it's always that nugget, man. When you find that nugget, you perk up. See, that's why he gonna talk to me, because he know I know the history. I ain't telling what I heard. I'm telling what I know. I sit there and watch the paint dry. But when I come back, I can take that paint and I'm going to tell you all the nuggets inside of it. That's why you benefit from me doing what I'm doing. This is why my channel don't grow. This is why my numbers seem off compared to when you see who my subscribers versus the number of viewers. And y'all thinking ain't nobody. No. They don't want you knowing this. You understand? Everybody else got their lane. They doing what they do. That's fine. So anyway. Enough with that. Moving forward. So now they said they make this mistake. They bringing in blacks because they said basically South Africa was the best habitable place for European. They said 9 months of the year is habitable for the white man. Yes, there are some months where it's 30 days or maybe it's just extreme heat. And then there's 3 months where it's unbearable, but it's only 3 months. They said this is a white man's heaven. Why are you bringing Negroes in here? This is where we messed up. And they said back then that because we're doing this, this is going to come back later to bite us in our ass. Damn, boy, somebody prophesized on that, didn't they? So now, according to them, they say in the 17th century, right, that black people were considered by everywhere you read in history, no matter where you read in history, it's going to be the same. That all colonizing nations was to make the Negro a hewer of wood and a drawer of water. Right? You done read that somewhere before, right? Ain't that something? So it was, again, like I said, it was that Portuguese ship. It started in this whole aspect of now using slaves, but they don't want to tell you nobody's indigenous. They want to tell you when Bartholomew Diaz came there and when he put his cross there was nobody else residing there. It was just a land that nobody inhabited. So by him putting his cross, that gave him jurisdiction. That is his, you know what I'm saying, John Hancock on the land. So in the mindset of the white man, he said that the white man and the black man could not work side by side on equal terms. Because he said this, think about this. He said manual labor came to be regarded by them as degrading. And they hold that sentiment even to this day. People who do the real work, when you have to do physical energy labor with your physical strength, he looks at that is the weakest work there is. And he has the nerve to tell us in history that because of his conditioned environment that made him aggressive and made him more ingenuine or ingenuous. And because of our abundance, it made us lazy and shiftless. But when it comes to hard labor, and he'll put that on you, and then he wants to live in the life of luxury and shiftlessness, then he says, but he's great, but because you work hard, you're right, okay, all right, whatever, right? Now, what happened is, since they had laws, they had these so-called Dutch laws in South Africa, and their manumission is just the same thing you say emancipated, right? Now they said their manumission at that particular time was easy, right? To free a Negro, right? And when they freed a Negro, according to them, they had all the rights equal to the colonists. That's what they say. Now, check this part out. They say though they were without hereditary training necessary to enable them to make proper use of their privilege. Though they were without the hereditary training necessary to enable them to make proper use of their privilege. Meaning, think about what they did with our ancestors here. You're going to emancipate people that these people had skills and knowledge, but they did not have economics to be able to create their own independence. So you threw people out who had all the knowledge and skills, but didn't have nowhere to facilitate them. And then the way you reset it back up, you made them have to come back to you, and then you would work them, and then you charging them for everything, so they basically was working for free again. So what they saying in South Africa was they would free them, they would get all the same rights, but again, they didn't have no training. So what good is it for you to be manumitted, right, or emancipated when you can't utilize what you know and what you can do? So what happened is they said that they set up some kind of poor man's fund that when they relinquished or made a manumission that they had to do like public aid, right? They had to give them money for a certain period of time so that they could get on their feet. But that's not, again, that defeats the point when you as the so-called European Caucasian are bringing in all your people to facilitate and make a better life for them, and you keep them ousted out, then how are they supposed to participate? Even if you do give them, you're just still keeping them in a relative neutral position, just a little bit of, you know what I'm saying? They can eat just a little bit just to maintain, but they're not going to be able to do anything for their prosperity. Okay? So here we is in full circle. 2017. And the children of the descendants of what we're talking about, of the indigenous, are saying, hey, we're sitting here, we're watching foreign people. And when they say foreign, they don't just mean white folks. So let me say this. You know how we got a lot of our people who talk about back to Africa, and we're going to take our knowledge and go to Africa and build it up and build this. The same thing they talk about here. Foreigners coming in and the indigenous being there, and then you're going to oversee them. Again, I'm not against, look, I'm talking unification, I'm down with that. But the reality is this. If you get in and you set up shop, are you not going to try to bring up yours that you were struggling? Let's say that this brother that was in there that was considered the foreigner, when you look at him, you see he is a man of melanation. He's a melanated person. But somewhere in him, he has, again, going back like they told you, how they were bringing the white men in, and then they were having copulation with some of the indigenous women and having offsprings. That's why you see in some of these countries that, like, say, for instance, South America and things like that, these people be fully melanated, but will tell you they ain't black because they understand that. You understand? They understand all that. We're still kind of late on that game because, again, our isolation has made us like this, right? So a foreigner in their aspect is anything that is not indigenous like self. And so they're saying we want to get rid of all of that. But we're not so much focused on that one with the melanin. We know that accordingly, we want to do an audit. We want to audit and find out who all is in here that got land. We say, well, accordingly, we know the government got about 22% of the land. And then that 22%, a lot of they also accrued a lot of land that came from people of melanin who they taken from. So if they got 22%, that means about 78% belongs in the private hands of who? And they said, we know they not us. So the white man knows when they go and they get in them records and they find out that all this land is going to be white landowners or foreign. Foreign don't necessarily mean like that brother, could be Asians and Indians and everything else. So he's saying that him, and then I think it was another brother, I think, what was his name? I know his nickname is Juju. Julius Melner, who dressed up looking like a straight up Panther. He got, you know what I'm saying, got on the regalia, boy. He like, man, we taking this, we ain't paying for it. Right? And so they saying, look, this is a declaration of war if you do that. You pull this move, and y'all think y'all gonna kick us up out of here without a fight? It's gonna go down, baby. Well, you tell me what y'all think, man. I just wanted to bring a little bit to this story. I don't want to get too deep on it because I know I put stuff out here, you know, it is what it is. So, again, you know what I want you to do. Comment, subscribe, share, hit the like or dislike button. But again, you know, things is happening and things that keep showing. People realizing their stances is going to have to be made. A lot of this ain't going to be just building and then still not have to deal with the equation. I think a lot of people are thinking that building and, you know, circulating money and building is going to be the all be all. But when you're going to end up doing the same thing like you see here in South Africa, when you sitting there and realizing that all the things that you're trying to do, and then you're going to realize that there's other people are getting it and you're not getting it, even though you may have access to money and it ain't going to fruition, then you're going to get to the level that they talking about here. Yeah, I ain't telling you what I heard, y'all. I'm telling you what I know.